Hey everyone, I'm Nico from Licks of the Beast, and in this video, I'm going to explain the different ways that Iron Maiden harmonize guitar melodies and what about them makes them a little bit different from everyone else. Guitar harmonies have long been one of the defining characteristics of Iron Maiden's music. And while they started playing a less important role in their sound from the 1990s onward, it's still a compositional technique that is synonymous with Iron Maiden. Of course, there were plenty of hard rock and early heavy metal bands like Thin Lizzy and Judas Priest who harmonized riffs and lead guitar lines well before Iron Maiden. However, Iron Maiden took the twin guitar harmony to an entirely different level, making it an integral part of their sound, especially throughout the 1980s. What makes Iron Maiden's style of guitar harmonies particularly interesting is that they often sound more like a polyphonic melody than a harmonized line. And this is due to a particularly careful note choice and the blending of the distinct phrasing styles of each of the band's guitar players. For those of you who don't have a musical background or who might just be starting to develop an interest in this sort of thing, harmony in music is basically when two or more notes are played or sung at the same time. We won't get into all the theoretical aspects of it in this video, but generally speaking, there are three types of harmony. We have diatonic harmony, which uses only notes found within a given key or scale. Non-diatonic harmony, which can also include outside notes or notes borrowed from parallel keys. And finally, atonal harmony, which doesn't revolve around any specific tonal center. Now that last one isn't really something that applies to Iron Maiden's music, and the non-diatonic harmony is something they don't often do. So the examples I'll be discussing in this video will all be diatonic harmonies. Most scales in Western music have 7 pitches or tones, with some exceptions like the pentatonic, hexatonic, and blues scales, and the distance between these pitches is called an interval. Intervals are typically described by their quality, major, minor, perfect, augmented, or diminished, and their number, second, third, etc. So we would refer to a major or minor third or a perfect fifth, for example. Okay, so now that we've got you up to speed with the essential terminology and we've covered the very basic principles of harmony, let's get to the good stuff. Here are the 3 most common types of guitar harmony heard in the music of Iron Maiden. The first type of harmony is the most commonly used one in general, and that is to harmonize in thirds. And with Maiden, the harmony is usually a third above the main melody. So let's say we're in the key of E minor and the notes are D, E, and G. Like for example, the harmony line would then use the notes F sharp, because all Fs are sharp in this key, G, and B. They used this type of harmony so much during the 1980s that it became almost a cliche with Iron Maiden. Whenever you heard a harmony in thirds, people would almost immediately think Iron Maiden. Harmonizing in thirds sounds very aesthetically pleasing to the ear, and it also makes for a tight sounding harmony. This is because the notes are closer together than the other kinds of harmony that we're going to be looking at. Let me show you a few easily recognizable examples of this kind of harmony. The main riff from Aces High is harmonized in parallel thirds the whole way through. So when we say a harmony is in parallel intervals, it means that both lines follow the exact same sequence without any variation whatsoever. So if a line in the key of C major that goes A, G, A, and C is harmonized up in parallel thirds, the second voice would be playing the same sequence starting on C. So C, B, C, E. So for Aces High, Dave is playing this line. And Adrian is playing it like this. You'll notice that the fingerings for the 2 lines aren't the same. And that's because in the case of diatonic harmony, some notes will be major thirds apart from the original note, and some will be minor thirds. In other words, some notes will be 1.5 steps away from the original tone, and others will be 2 whole steps apart. And because of that, the fingerings of a melody will have to be readapted to accommodate those notes. Now this will apply to the next type of harmony as well. Hallowed Be Thy Name is another very well-known Maiden song that features a harmony in thirds. After the guitar solos, they go back to the main riff, only this time over a faster, more driving beat, and Dave plays the main part, while Adrian breaks away into a harmony played a third higher. Once again, this is in parallel thirds throughout, with Dave playing it this way, and Adrian taking the higher line like this. The Clairvoyant is another one that features a harmony in parallel thirds, this time in the higher octave, which makes it sound particularly melodic, but also very tight so that it has almost like a Mediterranean kind of vibe. Here, Adrian plays the higher melody, and Dave plays the lower part. The next type of harmony Iron Maiden use often is the harmony in sixths, where the main melody will be harmonized 6 intervals lower. So using the same example as before, if the notes of the main melody are D, E, and G, harmonizing a sixth lower means we walk down 5 intervals from D. So C, B, A, G, and we land on F sharp. So in the key of E minor, a sixth lower from the notes D, E, and G would again be F sharp, G, and B, only in the lower octave. So going down a sixth is essentially the same as harmonizing up a third, and then playing that higher line an octave lower. The reason for using this type of harmony is to broaden the sound a little, making things sound a little bigger and more open. The most well-known example of this kind of harmony by Iron Maiden is probably the main melody line in The Trooper, where Dave Murray plays this, and Adrian plays a similar pattern down here. Another nice example of a harmony in sixths is the line they play in Infinite Dreams, just before the bridge and again after the solos. So Dave is playing this beautiful melody here, and Adrian plays it down here. The result is a dreamy soundscape, especially with that powerful rhythm section underneath. The bass line here plays an important role as it changes the meaning of the notes by adding a different root with every note change. Now, have you noticed that with these two harmonies, the two parts weren't exactly playing the same motif? In Trooper, Dave plays this. If Adrian were to play it exactly the same way, just a sixth lower, it would be like this. But that's not what he does. For one thing, he varies between playing the first part this way and this way. And he doesn't play the tail like this, but by repeating the same two notes. This is a simple but brilliant choice of notes because had he played the tail like Dave does, it would have sounded like a stop each time. But finality isn't what's needed here. This part absolutely needs continuity for it to flow forward with each repeat over the gallop rhythm underneath. Repeating those two notes makes it feel more fluid and thus much more satisfying. On Infinite Dreams, Dave and Adrian are almost playing the same pattern except for two notes in the middle that move in the opposite direction. So Dave is playing this, and Adrian plays his part like this. The reason for this slight difference is simply that Adrian's low melody works better that way, as it sounds more natural, and once again, it's a question of fluidity. This is something Maiden do fairly often on their harmony lines, and it's not because they're trying to be progressive or purposely different. They just have a really strong sense of what works best for a given line, so they're not too concerned with harmonizing a line necessarily in parallel intervals. Now, there have been a few instances in their music where notes from the two or three parts will clash because they're playing highly dissonant intervals. But when everything is played together, it just sounds perfect. The third type of harmony we're going to look at is technically not a harmony. And that's because octaves are not considered to be harmony, as they are essentially the same note, only in different registers. Still, they are clearly different pitches and we perceive them as such. So we'll often say things like harmonizing in octaves, even though that's a technically incorrect expression. A good example of this is the interlude from The Writing on the Wall, just between Dave and Adrian's solos. So Adrian and Dave are playing the line in the lower register here, and Janick is playing it up here. Dance of Death also features a very recognizable octave melody. So Janick and Dave are playing the higher octave in unison, and Adrian plays the same melody an octave lower. So the first time he plays it here, and the second time he plays it up here. Octaves are a great way to make a musical section sound really big, and in fact, it's a widely used compositional device in movie scores, where you'll have multiple voices playing a mixture of unisons and octaves in a thick layering. A really great example for all of these types of harmonies performed back to back can be found in the band's 14-minute epic Rime of the Ancient Mariner, right after Dave Murray's guitar solo. The first melody is harmonized in sixths and feels like sailing on a vast sea. It sounds big and there's room for the music to breathe. Now, on the second repeat of that harmony, things start to get a little bit more tense as they add a third harmony line that is a sixth above the lower line and a fourth below the higher line. The next one goes back and forth between just two notes and is harmonized in thirds. And the feeling here is tense, dark, and tight, almost claustrophobic even. The third and final one is truly majestic, and it just sounds and feels huge as they play a descending Phrygian pattern in two different octaves. The reason why these three parts in this section of the song convey these different emotions so powerfully is a combination of both the type of melody and the corresponding harmony. Now, knowing where to harmonize and how to do so in the most effective way possible to create a specific mood or feeling makes all the difference. And that's why I think it's great to be able to study and analyze a band who has been doing it so successfully for almost 50 years. There are a few more ways Iron Maiden have used harmonies. For example, in Caught Somewhere in Time, they use fourths and fifths on the main riff. Or they might play something that is more or less in thirds, but the melodies are slightly different, as they did in Quest for Fire or Revelations. But the three types of harmony we discussed here are by far the most common ones. So I think this will give you a good idea of the band's approach to guitar harmonies. So that's it for now. I hope this was a fun watch and that it gave some of you a better understanding of what makes us love those Iron Maiden harmonies so much. I really appreciate you all taking the time to watch this video, especially if you made it all the way to the end. Let me know your thoughts and questions in the comments, and stay tuned for more licks of the beast.